Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
And this is Stress-Free Living. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ray Samich, along with Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you this fine day?
Good morning, Ray. How are you?
I'm excellent, thank you. And we are joined today on Zoom by a number of esteemed guests. We're so delighted that they are with us. Grateful for them joining us today. And we know that we have people listening all around the world. We continue to hear from them across the country and across the oceans, and we're grateful for them. And especially to our Cleveland-based audience, those who are listening on AM or FM radio, WINT. Wherever you are this fine day, we are grateful for you, and we hope that today will reduce some stress in your life and add some value to your life. Ratanjit, last week, you brought an idea to the show that said, is being passive a crime? And as we always share with our audience, we don't try to think about them too much in advance because we like the spontaneous way that thoughts develop, especially when you have your antennas that are on your mustache in the right direction, and you can really get great insight from the wisdom that is in this world and around you. But I think we went a little off track. As I listened to the show, watched the show afterwards, we started talking about being in a comatose state. And in that state of being in a coma, we don't pay attention to what we're doing. We don't really consciously think about what we do. And true to your point, we live our lives that way very often. Maybe we live our entire lives in a state of being comatose, and we're not really aware of our surroundings. And so there's a validity to that. But it really didn't answer the question, because the original question was, is being passive a crime? And I'm talking about when you make a choice. When you make a choice that says, I want to actively participate in this issue. I either want to lead it or I want to be an active participant, versus our decision, our conscious decision to sit back and let the world go by. And as much as in my setup here, it makes me sound like that's not a good choice, I was always raised that being passive is virtuous. Being meek, being kind, being humble, being tolerant, those were virtuous. And so those go along with being passive, the way that I was raised. And so in some ways, being passive is a good choice, and it's the right choice. And again, maybe it's a virtuous choice. So that leads me back to the question, when we are consciously involved, we're not comatose, but we're consciously involved, we're aware of our surroundings, can we be passive, or should we always be active?
Well, see, Ray, when our decision is made by our conscience, but if our conscience is not really in charge of us, our conscience gets suppressed, and it says something from inside, say, this person is getting hurt and somebody's hurting that person, I should go save that person. And then your worldly intelligence, or what you have learned from the world, is, well, you are going to get involved in the lawsuit, you are going to get somewhere involved, so that keeps you away from that. So it depends on whether your conscience is stronger, or you are stronger in the mindset of protecting yourself. So I'm taking the extreme case when somebody is abusing somebody in front of you, and you should save that person. You should at least say that this is incorrect. Now, the other side is that when somebody is talking and somebody is discussing, and we are sitting there passively or actively participating, then oftentimes your ego wants to take the importance and you want to say something to be important, thinking that you are adding value. So if it is coming from the ego side in the participation or interfering a conversation or suggesting something or becoming a part of the conversation, then that is not correct. If you are helping, if you are making a difference, again, I sound like a broken record. If you are adding the highest value unconditionally, then you must get involved or stay away from it. It depends on each decision should be based on which one would add the highest value.
So let's go back. Let's cover first, and I think you probably can do it quickly. That extreme situation. All right. I mean, we're in a room, and there's something that tragic happens. There's a fire, and we see older people there. We see young kids there, and so, I think it is within our human the way we're designed that we want to say, hey, I'm not going to run out first. I'm going to help the children. I'm going to help the frail and disabled to get out of that situation. Or as you said, we see somebody that, that is violent and beating someone, and we try to go in there and help. Okay. Those are decisions that we make to be active. But even though I just gave the reasons why those are the reasons we should get involved, in our minds, we're also saying, but wait a minute, if I go help that person, I have a family at home to provide for. I have children that I need to raise. I have, I may have some health issues myself. And if I spend too much time helping others, then I may, because I have a respiratory issue, I may not be able to breathe. I mean, all of these quick thoughts come in our brains, and is there understanding in the bigger one that sometimes we have to be passive even in those situations, even though it seems so obvious that we have to be active and help others?
Well, see, if you have a handicap, if you have a condition, a fire is going on, and you are your asthma or your very, very difficult breathing condition, or you're not physically fit to do that, then obviously you ask for help. You call 911, you go somewhere, and that is also active participation. Active participation is not limited to you directly getting involved, but active participation is somehow making the help available. So that is what a lot of people do. But there are some people who are healthy and who are fully capable and who are fully able to help that situation, and they want to stay away because they want to do not get involved in the complication which may result in a police case or a legal case, and then you'll be going to court and you'll be wasting time, and then somehow or other somebody can blame you and all that. So that is the mind which keeps you away from that. That is what is in it for me keeps you away from that.
So we've talked a lot about conscience and how that word isn't really used much anymore. It seems the system of the world doesn't want us to think about the conscience that's embedded inside of us. But those matters really do become a matter of conscience, right? I mean, if we know that it is the right thing to do and that we have the ability to help, physically, emotionally, mentally, we can do something to make a positive difference. That's where the conscience really should be our guide.
Yes. See, the conscience, if it is directed by your ego, your mind, it is contaminated. Conscience, when it is pure, it is directed by the divine force present in you. Oneness is directing you. That divine force is a single force unifying the whole universe into one. It is the same thing which is present in you, same thing which is present in me. Once that power begins to direct your conscience, your mind, your brain, then you basically, your decision making is correct. Otherwise, our decision making is biased. It is generally looking for what is in it for me, how do I gain? And oftentimes, when we are subjected into these critical conditions, your mind is confused because your personal agenda, your ego directs you in a different direction, and where your inner being, which is always present in you, directs you in a different direction.
How do we allow the conscience to be in charge of that? Because I think most of us want that. Maybe not in the heat of the moment, but generally as we live our lives, I think we like the idea that a more powerful, more loving, more integrated conscience, aware of the whole world and the oneness of the world, should be guiding us. How do we make that happen?
You see, supposing you are in a crowd and an older person is going in front of you, and somehow he had a fit or something, he tried to fall. And unknowingly, your hand will go and help them. Because when you are not using your brain, you are automatically designed to help, designed to get involved, designed to be active. So that is an example. And then afterwards, if somebody has saved somebody's life, not knowing that they were going to save that life, later on we call them heroes. And that person will say, oh, look, I'm not a hero. It just happened through me. I don't know how I made that decision. So that is natural tendency when our ego or mind is absent making that decision. When we have enough time to allow our mind or our ego to make the decision, then that decision becomes contaminated. That is not a natural decision.
That makes perfect sense. But unfortunately, we do normally have a little bit of time for the brain to kick in. And it sounds like that's not the best situation when that happens. Is there a way that we can use our brain to allow more input from our conscience and not just let it be an ego, what's in it for me decision?
But this comes with the practice, Ray. If we have constantly developed a habit of asking this question from our brain and convince ourselves that our purpose of life, when we are here for a limited time, it doesn't matter how intelligent you are, doesn't matter how educated you are, doesn't matter how much money you have, how much influence you have, the time on this planet is limited and you don't know when you're going to go. So for that limited time, you can either utilize that time in gathering things, gathering worldly things, material things, or knowledge, or all these things, and get trophies and get medals and get recognitions, or you are gaining the knowledge and all that, and understanding my purpose of life is to add the highest value. If you're trained, you're convinced your mind, that is. Now the interesting thing is, all the things we are going after, fame, money, all that, actually very easily come to you when you are part in the mindset of adding the highest value. Because whether you are at work or whether you are in society or whether you are at home, if your mind is always focused on adding the highest value, your ultimate value goes up. The company you work for values more because you add the highest value, but you do that unconditionally. So it's kind of an irony that we say, I'm going to add the highest value only when I gain something. See, the problem is that if you understand oneness, in oneness mode, your human body, say, for example, operates in oneness. So if I have an itch on my face, on my nose, my hand goes and relieves the itch. But if I have an itch on my hand, in worldly sense, I would expect my nose to come and help relieve me the itch. In oneness, one hand has relieved the itch of your nose. When your hand has an itch, another hand will come and relieve that itch. So in oneness, you do good things to one person, but you get returned the goodness from a totally different person. But whereas in our mind or psyche, we want that person who I gifted should return my gift, who I helped should return me. I'm a good friend. He should be my good friend. So we are always looking for reciprocation. In oneness, there is no reciprocation.
Well, our mind uses the experiences and uses the education and uses what we've seen around us to us and to other people, and it immediately makes those decisions that says this is the best choice for me to make. And it is no question about it. You are right. The conscience puts a different spin on it. It does come back and say it's not about how this affects you or how it's going to change your life. It's about how it adds much more value to the whole. So is it as simple as stopping before we make any decision and saying, does this add the highest value? Is what I'm going to do at this moment the best thing that I can do to add the highest value to the situation? Is that the best habit that we can get in before we basically do or say anything?
Yeah, see, that habit, Ray, takes you away from typical decision-making difficulties, because you're always looking to find out, how do I add value? Many times it is not an easy answer to come up with. But if you are in the habit of constantly thinking about that, and as long as your intent is to add the highest value, you will get there. You will not be able to add the highest value every single time. But if you are on that journey, you are going to get there.
Well, that's a great segue, because I tried to take with how you started with an extreme example, okay, a violent situation, a fire, something like that, where it seems that would be a rather simple decision of whether to be active or passive.
Right.
Kind of clarify that. How do I add the highest value to this with all things considered? That's not the norm of life. Most, as you just said, most of the time it's not an easy decision. It's you can justify, you can weigh over all of the options and probably argue with yourself about all the different ways that you can act, including being very active, aggressive, being moderately active, being very, very passive or moderately passive. So that's what I want to talk about when we come back. The normal day-to-day decision making that we are in, and is the same solution relevant there as you just said for the big extreme decisions, or does that add some other things to it? Because life is filled with situations where we aren't sure of what to do.
Yes.
We'll hopefully answer that question. We'll ask that question and get some answers when we come back on today's edition of Stress Free Living. Please stay with us. Okay, we are clear for about 2 minutes. Which of you gentlemen would like to throw out your own questions or comments? Please do.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
When somebody was talking about a situation in a room, and then how is one to react, one way or the other, stay passive or participate. My thought went, it also depends on the situation and the severity of it. And I'm going to give you an example. When, for example, if you happen to be in a situation where husband and wife have a fight, do you get involved? Is that the best adding value? Or do you stay and let them resolve it? But even that depends on if somebody's basic human rights are being violated, or is it just a simple argument? So decision on what action would add the highest value, staying quiet or getting involved, depends on the severity of the situation as well. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Dylan, Dr. Ray? Anything? Any questions you want me to ask Ratanjit?
There's a common phrase that you hear throughout life from a lot of people, meaning say you've got to participate in life, not just let it go by. So I keep on thinking about that as you're talking about this theme of passivity versus being proactive or active. And a lot of kids even are told, if you don't participate and you just stand by, you're just, not engaging in life. So we're taught from an early age to engage and not be passive, but are we being consciously active is the question for me.
And we are back on Stress Free Living. Ray Samich, Ratanjit Sandhi. As we have shared with you in the past, if you have been a regular listener of ours, we have a Zoom audience and we have the opportunity of sharing some interaction with our Zoom audience. If you would like to be one of those participants in the future, go out to our website, wintradio.com, and you can get all the information on how you can join us on the Zoom call. Ratanjit, a couple of the comments that were made there. There's a common expression that says life is not meant to be a spectator sport. So that in itself kind of says that you're not supposed to be passive anytime at all. But another one of our guests said, there's times when you probably should just mind your own business. And there may be an opportunity, for example, if you see a couple that are fighting amongst themselves, verbally fighting, arguing, maybe it is your first reaction to say, hey, I've been through there. I know that before. Let me go in and give them some marriage advice, some counseling. But there's other, but maybe the reality is you should just step back and let them resolve that because they're the ones that know what it's all about and you should just mind your own business. So those are good examples, I think, of the perplexing situation that we often face in life, not knowing when we should be active, not knowing when we should be passive. And it's so easy in today's world to take the passive route. It's so safe. It's so easy. You don't have to worry about hurting people's feelings. You don't have to worry about a lawsuit because you took the wrong action. You don't have to, the worst situation is, well, I could have done something, but I didn't. But you're not regretting what you did, and other people aren't complaining about what you did. So in the extreme example we talked about up front, we know action should be done if it's adding the highest value. If it's not so obvious, is it actually smarter to be passive and just sit back and take the easy way out?
I say, Ray, if you take a family with the children and husband and wife, now there are differences, of course, and there are fights in the family and so on. So now when children are doing something not right, we always say, no, don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself, or you're going to. And then many times when they misbehave, sometimes we give them lectures, and we want to correct them. And what happens as they grow up after teenagers, they stop listening to you, because they are now getting allergic to constant criticism, because we have not learned how to add value. Criticizing does not correct. If you are in a business situation and you are the boss, and because you are the boss, you can walk in and criticize anybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that demotivates people. The right way to add value is, if you find an employee who is not doing something correctly, you can first bring that employee and catch them, or find a situation which they do well. Catch them doing the right things first, and praise them. The general praise does not work. By saying you are a great person, you are the wonderful person, it doesn't work. When we say that, John, you have done this particular task in this manner because you have done this and this and this, and that elevates their confidence. And now you can say, but John, with all that intelligence and all that thing, you ought to be able to do this one better. So instead of criticizing, you have pointed out how to do better. The same thing works with children. Two kids, one family moved into this neighborhood, and these two kids, one 9-year-old and one 10-year-old, got together and started playing. And there were nice woods behind the house. So one says, let's go in the woods and play in the woods. So the new kid says, no, I can't go. My dad is going to get mad at me. Listen to this, getting mad at me. So in other words, whenever dad tried to correct, raised his voice. And the only message which got through the kid is that he's mad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we don't even know how to address these issues. So getting involved, if it is done incorrectly, always backfires. Yes, we need to get involved. Yes, this life is once a lifetime. We need to make a difference. But do we know how to get involved?
Once again, you've taken the conversation to a different level. You always have a way of doing that. I'm approaching this saying, what should we do? Or should we be active or passive? And you're now saying it really depends on what the action is that we do. Because if we take the wrong action, If we do it and do it the wrong way, then probably being passive is a better choice. Okay, but if we were active, saying and doing it the right way, then that would be the best choice. So you've added another angle to this conversation, which is very meaningful. I don't know if we make a decision that says, okay, I am going to be active. I don't know if we make the right decision that says, what am I going to do when I am active? And that seems to be a really important part of the process. So let's elaborate a little bit more on that part, because I think you've touched on something really important. The tone of the voice, whether you come across as angry, the setup of the conversation that you use, the opening words to get people's attention. I think I shared, I came back from a conference and they say you now have 7 seconds to say the right thing to get people's attention. After 7 seconds, most people tune out. They stop listening if they're not engaged in 7 seconds, which is a crazy number to me, but that's what the research is saying. So how do you start the conversation with somebody? What is the tone of voice? I mean, it's pretty complicated, isn't it? That we have to do it the right way in order to get what we hope is going to be the right results.
But see, you talk about tone of the language. When we converse with people, Ray, we focus so much on the words we choose to have communication. The expert today tells us the words we choose, the language, only contributes less than 7% towards the real communication. 39% is your tone. Whether you raise your voice, you lower your voice, if we are not having love in our tone, caring in our tone, it does not get to the other person. And then rest of it is body language. And so we don't even know how to communicate. So body language, if you are parked in ego, no matter how much polished you are, you'll get through. Your body language does not lie. So that is why when an advice is given to somebody, and if this advice may be correct, that is the advice you need. But if the person who is giving us the advice, her tone, her body language is not in the right place, we get the message that they are parked in their ego. They think they are superior to us. And we will never accept that criticism, no matter how correct that is.
So if our body language doesn't lie, is nature telling us that we really have to be honest? We really have to be who we are meant to be? Because we can say whatever fancy words and intelligent words we want to use, but if the body language is the majority of communication, and if we can't lie with that, then it seems like nature is telling us that we have to be honest.
Yeah, but see, we live in this world where what I'm going to say, Ray, you're never going to do a show with me again. There is no honesty left. We are all dishonest people because we are not honest with ourselves. If I'm not honest with myself, I cannot be honest with anybody else. That honesty, that I'm not honest with myself, is because first thing is I am labeling myself constantly, which is the biggest dishonesty. I'm a male, I'm a white or a black or Asian or American. I'm old, I'm young. This is my heritage. And this is my title. So those are all lies. The reality is that I don't know who I am. So until we know the truth about ourselves, how can we tell somebody? So the absence of this, we are telling all the surface quality or surface things. We are not telling the truth.
But those aren't lies, Ratanjit. I mean, I
Partial
don't.
truths.
What?
They're partial, they are surface decorations. They are not you.
Well,
Those are-
my body is male. My body is older. My education.
That is your body. You said just the body. I'm asking about you. I'm not asking about your body. And you're telling me about your body.
Okay.
So that's the point. So we are considering I'm my body. I'm my heritage. So so I'm asking, who are you, Ray? And you're telling me this is my body. So you are telling me a lie, the lie, isn't it?
It's not a lie. It's telling you what kind of car I drive, I guess, to use your other analogy. I like.
Yeah, but I'm asking about you. You're telling me about your car.
Okay. But we do identify with what we see in the mirror every day. We do identify with what we have
It's a
accomplished.
mistaken identity, Ray, mistaken identity. But we haven't found the truth about ourselves. And once we find the truth about ourselves, majority of our problems disappear. And automatically everything falls into place. Otherwise, we go through life trying to be nice, trying to get trophies and medals. This world is full of do-gooders, but this world is completely absence of the goodness itself. Nobody has become the goodness itself. We keep on doing the good things. For that, we need trophy, medal, recognition. If nobody recognizes that, we stop doing that. Because you say, nobody cares, so why should I do anything? You hear that constantly. And ultimately, Ray, we don't harm the world. By being not honest with ourselves, the only entity we undermine, harm, is ourselves.
Well, I don't know if it's the only thing. I mean, I do agree we harm ourselves with that, but I think we are harming the entire world anytime that we're dishonest. And I think that's probably the state of the world. One of the biggest problems with today's world is that nobody really trusts anybody anymore. Nobody trusts our leaders. Nobody trusts our media. We are skeptical about everything that we see and hear, and that even makes it between one-on-one with people that we know. We're just skeptical of everything. I think the dishonesty in the world, I kind of agree with what you said. I'm not going to stop doing the show with you after all these years because I think you're right. I think there is a major absence of honesty in the world because...
See, you're in marketing. What is marketing? Is the most glorified...
twisting the truth.
Right, twisting the truth.
Yeah.
So that's you get paid for that.
I do.
You make a living out of telling lies.
I do, except I do like to say that I won't even do that for somebody who I don't think is a legitimate good person with a good business. I won't manipulate something that's bad to be good. But still, do I manipulate the truth to get people to buy or to get people to think a certain way? Yes, I do. And that's filled with the world. That's what we're doing. So, okay. Well, I just put myself in a hole there, didn't I? All right, Ratanjit. It's time for a break. I think I'm saved by the bell. When we come back, we need to wrap this up because this is part 2. And as one of our guests said, we don't want there to be a part 3. So we need to answer the question once and for all, is being passive a crime? And I'm going to ask you to give us that answer when we come back. We are on Stress Free Living this morning. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, final break, final input from anybody. I got to get out of this.
I'm going to answer it. Yes, it's a crime.
Okay, let's do a poll. Is it a crime, Doctor? You got to unmute yourself. Hit your microphone. We're not hearing you.
Okay, so one truth is that you cannot be passive. And the example they give is that your body, if it is passive, you die. So the same way, you're designed to be active. Now the question is, as you pointed out, and you identify shades of ethics, right? So you can do marketing with integrity and you can do marketing without integrity. So I think the one thing I think most ancient wisdom tells you is you cannot be passive. Now, in Midwest, so if you're on East Coast, West Coast, everybody is running so fast. If you're passive, they'll run over you or they'll carry you forward, okay? So like in trains in Japan, there are people who push you in the trains, right? So on course, they push you into action. Whereas I think because of the serenity of the Midwest, if you're passive, nobody would disturb you for a long time.
And is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, so given if the body stops breathing, we die. If the body stops sweating, we die. If the body starts, extracting waste, we die. Okay. So if you draw inspiration from the body, you need to be engaged in the world. And as Ratanjit has said multiple times, and when you are engaging with the world, do it honestly, truthfully, and by adding unconditional maximum value.
Thank you. And we are back on Stress Free Living. Once again, having some very engaging conversations with our Zoom audience. We urge you to join us on that route. And please visit wintradio.com for information. I want to thank our participants here today for really giving us some additional thoughts and ideas of how to answer this. But before we talk about what they said, Ratanjit, I want to make sure we get with you. And I want to ask this question, your opinion. All right, because no part 3 today or next week. Is being passive a crime? In your opinion, are we ever allowed to be passive in our lives?
See, as long as you have life in you, you're always active. But your activeness sometimes does not contribute anything. So the world considers you as passive. But even in the passive mode, you are active because you have made a decision to be passive.
Yeah.
So it is impossible when you are alive to be not active. So you're always active. But being active is it's not a question of crime or not crime, because you are always active. So you even if you don't want it, your brain is engaged. You can see things. Things either bother you or you get drawn away from it. And so we actively decided to not be active. So,
okay, I mean that's a real simple answer that says you can't be passive. It's not physically possible. And one of our guests did say the same thing. If you're breathing, if you're sweating, if your body is alive, then you're being active. And so we're supposed to use that as an example of being active. And I hear you and I hear him, but the reality is we do choose then, we actively choose to be passive.
Right.
Okay. So,
You participate whether you want to add value or not add value. That's what you do.
well, I'm talking about passivity as being, as watching the world go by, being that spectator sport. Okay. Is there ever justification for watching the world go by and not being a part of it? Can we ever justify that? Maybe that's a better question. Can we ever justify being passive in life? Is there ever a time when we should be?
See, that's again, when you are in the coma, as we said last time, when you are not fully awake and active, you are active in being inactive. In other words, if you are active in being depressed, you are active in being self-pity, you are active in those kind of things, and under those circumstances, you are not in any position to help anybody. So until we are fully awake, and the pill to have to be awakened is gratefulness. And once you are grateful for every breath you take, and then automatically a positive mindset comes in you. Under those conditions, you are automatically positioned a desire to add value, to do something good. And that only happens if you are grateful. So think of a day when your day is going great, you got new customers and you got a big payment and all that. So somehow or other you feel happy. So somehow it's a consequence of all these things, and you are grateful for that. And as a unknowingly, you have a desire to do something. You bring flowers for your wife. You call your children. You do things which add value to others. But in order for you to do that, you have to be in the right state of mind. To bring the right state of mind, you have to have unconditional gratefulness. Or gratefulness comes from situation. If somebody has given me a raise, if I won a lottery, or if I got something new, I'm grateful for that day, I'm happy. But until you realize that the gift of life is the biggest gift you can have, the breath you take every moment is not assured, it is a gift. And that gives you license to operate this human body. And this human body gives you all the great feelings. So we all should be grateful for every breath we take. We don't need anything else. So then you are in a position to be active in right manner.
Earlier in the show, we've got down to the real simple question again that says, is what I'm about to do going to add the highest value? And we did agree that that is probably the single most important question that we can ask before we take any action, including making the decision to be passive, right?
Yes.
I think you've just put a new foundation, though, that is required before we ask that question. And that is that we have to be in a pure state of gratefulness. Because if we're not in that pure state of gratefulness, we may not answer that question properly. We may ask that question tainted by conditions and tainted by what's in it for me. And when we say add the highest value, that's not as easy as it sounds, because if we have too much of our brain in there, we're saying, well, it adds value to others, but it especially adds value to me. It especially helps me in my particular cause and purpose. So that puts it over the top, So, but if we're doing it in gratefulness, then I think hopefully we're much more open-minded to oneness in the world as opposed to what's in it for me. So is that maybe the answer to this question, that before we can ever decide whether we should be active or whether we should be passive, or to what extent we should be, we have to quickly put ourselves into that state of mind of gratefulness. And then once we're in there, ask that huge question, okay, what am I going to do now that adds the highest value?
You can't quickly put that you have to remain in that state. You have to practice to remain in the state when there is no emergency calling on you. There is no situation calling on you. And then once you are in that state, you are automatically parked in the mindset of making the right decision, adding the highest value. So
it's not realistic under a crisis mode where seconds matter to take the time to do all of that, everything I just laid out. You have to be in that grateful mode constantly, you're saying. Constantly. Okay, so that's a habit that we really have to work on. I mean, I know you've talked about gratefulness millions of times, but it isn't.
You can transform your life, Ray. Once you are grateful, you are not upset with the world. You are grateful, you want to listen to people, your relationship with your children, your spouse, your friends, your associates would dramatically change once you are in the gratefulness mode. Because that gratefulness mode gives you that body language and gives you that tone which allow you to communicate with people. So when you say something kindly, nicely, in a right tone, it has amazing impact. Even when you are criticizing somebody, if you're doing it with ultimate gratefulness for that person, ultimate compassion for that person, it gets through.
We've done so many shows on gratefulness. We've had so many conversations about it. And I mean, there's no reason not to be grateful. There's no reason not to have a completely pure, grateful heart. But why do we not listen to that? Why do we not
Habits.
all just embrace that reality? I mean, it is so empowering. It seems like the ultimate virtue, really. I mentioned earlier, virtues when my mother taught me to be kind and compassionate and loving and everything. But all of that really, if you think about it, comes from gratefulness.
Yes.
Okay. So why isn't that just our first nature to have that, when we know that there's so much good that comes out of that?
Well, see, we have not given that habit to our children. We were not given that habit. We just say, be grateful, be grateful, be grateful. You can't be just by a command, be grateful. And ultimately, once you begin to realize the gift of life itself, that this entire human body is gifted to you, the life in itself is gifted to you, then you realize, oh my God, this is not, I have no license, I have no contract. This body can be taken away. The health, my capability to see, my capability to listen, my capability to taste. When you are eating delicious meal, you should be grateful. Gosh, I have the capability to taste. And so every action will transform you into gratefulness mode.
Ratanjit, it is time for us to go, unfortunately. The clock on the wall says we are out of time. We thank you we're grateful to you for all of the wisdom and thoughts and love that you share with us each and every show. And we're grateful also to our guests that are with us and all of our listeners. And we hope that this has reduced some stress in your life and caused you to be a little more grateful as your first action and your first foundation for life. Thanks to everybody. Ratanjit, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
We look forward to being with you again on the next edition of Stress Free Living. Remember, folks, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day.